Right on, guys. Back again for my last video for the minute. So yesterday I went in for a rigid cystoscopy with hydrodistension and or biopsies. Again, I've got this video is done with on the basis of point of view of something with bifid urethra. I covered this in my flexible cystoscopy video, but again, for those that may be watching this for rigid cystoscopy point of view, this is basically normal and type 1A, which I have. Just to excuse the poor anatomic drawings at the end of the day. So basically, I got an over and under shotgun with a blanked off barrel. Basically, that's the easiest way to come out and say it. No, if you're at this point where you've been referred for rigid cystoscopy, either because you've had problems, maybe tolerating flexible cystoscopy, maybe because they've got to do something a little bit more invasive for whatever reason. In my case, really, it was last chance really to actually have a proper look under general anaesthetic while I'm asleep. It's a bit of a strange term, really, while you're asleep. I've covered this already. I'm not going to go over the anaesthetic side in this video because that's already in another video just on general anaesthetic itself. So we are basically going to focus on the cystoscopy and the recovery afterwards, basically. So because I got the bifid urethra and things were very sore after the flexible cystoscopy, I have been bricking it really. Obviously, first time going down for general as well. You've got two things you're worried about: more procedure. So in terms of scope sizes, I think 19 franc and 17 franc and 19 franc French gauge sheaths they tend to use for the rigids, which are slightly bigger again than the flexible scopes. Again, because they've got a small urethral opening, things are going to get stretched. Now, if you've got a normal urethral opening, it's probably not going to be too much of a problem. You're probably going to be able to comfortably cope with that kind of size. Again, there's plenty of videos on YouTube which show rigid cystoscopy equipment, how they're assembled. It's all quite a clever setup. There are videos, I think, a couple done by a foreign urologist showing it, how they advance it through the urethra, which you may or may not want to watch. May have not benefited from watching these videos, but if you're interested to see, they are worth watching. So I was booked in yesterday. I went up at 11 o'clock. I was rushed in on a cancellation, so I didn't do the 7 to 10 day before urine sample because of the postal strikes. Nothing turned up in the post, so lucky I rang up on Friday and got my fasting instructions. I actually couldn't eat and drink anything after 7 o'clock in the morning. We're on clear fluids, I think, to about certainly till you go into hospital anyway at 11 o'clock. So then you sat there in the waiting room. Again, usual situation, seemed there with old men. Some were in there for other general surgeries. I think there was 3 of us in there waiting to be done under urology under the same surgeon, Mr. Hodgson. I had the choice a few weeks ago of going with Mr. Mosin, but I think Mr. Hodgson really wanted to see for his own eyes really what was going on. And considering he's the one been dealing with me, it makes sense really, other than reading someone else's report. And I'm happy under Mr. Hodgson as well. I sooner have him do it than someone else I don't really know. So obviously they come around to see you before, and he asked me how I was getting on with my changing my meds, and again quite concerned that I'd obviously lost capacity in the last 12 months, and obviously today is going to be basically originally supposed to be with hydrodistension, where they fill the bladder under general anaesthetic. And a normal healthy bladder should take 1,000 mils. Now you might hold this possibly if you're perhaps a bit unique. Might hold this capacity generally going on, but considering most people hold between 500 and 600, you will have a bladder stretch which will come back to normal to a point under distension. And he said they may or may not take biopsies depending on what they find. If you suffer with interstitial cystitis, mainly as a female, blokes can have it. They hadn't ruled out interstitial cystitis at this point. It was still partly treating me on the basis of neurological. I have had an MRI, which is clear, even though I've got a history of MS in the family. I've also started having delayed ejaculation as well, which may or may not be related. Touch wood, I don't get no erectile problems. Mr. Hodgson come around and they put you at ease sort of thing. I said, well, look, no, I've got quite a small urethra opening. He's really aware of the bifid urethra. Again, this will be for a very, very small percentage of the male population sort of thing. No, everyone else will have a normal urethra. I said, there's so little out on bifid urethra. This is probably one of the only videos or only set of videos that are going to cover a bifid urethra on them, really, because end of the day, it is quite rare, and there's not a lot of information online about anything really. Majority of doctors probably haven't seen a bifid urethra. Urologists will probably see more. Most nurses probably only ever hear of it. I got a friend who was nursing for years and she'd heard of it but never seen it. So this is basically what it's focused more around. So yeah, put me at ease. And obviously there was no option maybe of Botox, depending on what the hydrodistension does. They basically try to use the hydrodistension as a factory reset. So you're on your tablets, the bladder gets stretched, tricks your brain by numbing nerve endings. Not quite too sure how the hydrodistension really benefits. If you're suffering from interstitial cystitis, you may wake up in a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, and your symptoms may be a lot worse before they get better, because I don't have any pain or any discomfort relating to interstitial cystitis. They're not, my recovery was obviously different, though I was still worried because I thought, considering my bladder only normally holds 150 mils, and then stretch it out by another 850. I think I was more worried about the kind of pain I was going to wake up in. I think that was my biggest fear. But he put me easy. He said, "We'll make sure there's pain relief on hand." I already had codeine and ibuprofen to go home to, and they promised to send me home with lidocaine gel, which is they use a ton of during the procedure, even though you're under general anaesthetic. As I'll come to lidocaine gel. I did mention lidocaine gel in my last cystoscopy video, but I will mention it again in a little bit. So then this comes round again, a lovely chat, put you at ease. They asked you a lot of questions. Again, I covered all this in my anaesthetic video. They'll look through medications. I want to know what medications you're on. I am on 3 plus an off-the-shelf antihistamine. Again, if you've had a pre-op, they already know your medical history. I didn't have to have a pre-op. So again, it's just a bunch of basic questions. You tell them which hand you want your IV to be put in, and these are the people that are really looking after you on the operating theatre. Really, end of the day, the surgeon is doing the critical work, but they are just as critical, being they're keeping you alive and keeping you sedated. At the end of the day, sort of. My mother told me of a story when she was in training to be a nurse, and I think that was being done under a rigid cystoscopy, and the chap had obviously not been sedated properly and woke up just as they were about to insert the cystoscopy sheath, and I don't think the surgeon was any more impressed than what the patient was, but luckily he went back to sleep and was probably no more aware of it. I imagine they probably kept it quite quiet, because even back then there could have been risk of a lawsuit against the hospital. That is I would think, a very rare occurrence. Again, all that kind of thing was covered in my general anaesthetic video. So nurse comes round then, does your statistics, again more questions. They ask you then to change into a gown. Again, normal urological testing sort of thing. No, you get asked to take all your clothes off. He said, oh no, you can leave your boxers on. And I said, well, I'm not going to lose a perfectly good pair of boxers. He said, oh no, no, you keep them on till you go to theatre, and they take your dressing gown off you and your boxers or your whatever underwear you're wearing. If you're female, obviously, along with your slippers, and also then ask you lay on their anaesthetic on the operating table, ready to have your anaesthetic put in. Also, if you're having an epidural, I could have opted for epidural, but I think these procedures, they prefer to put you asleep. And I think for your own peace of mind, unless you really cannot tolerate a general anaesthetic, or they're worried about giving you a general anaesthetic, you're better just to be out of it, really, because it's a short procedure. Body's more relaxed, and especially something like this, they can do safer, and end of the day, and a lot less discomfort and stress to yourself. So then you're changing your gown, waiting in the waiting room. I was third on the list, unfortunately, so it was about. I did have a sip of water. I think needs to say I got to have a sip of water about 1:15 because the sulfasalazine makes my mouth quite dry. So by the time I went down to the operating theatre at 3:30, I was pretty dry. Went for a pee just before I went down. Not that I was really peeing a lot at that point anyway, just to make sure the bladder as empty as I could have it, I suppose. So anyway, they take you down to the operating theatre, anaesthetic room, separate room. I don't know what all hospitals are like, but they don't tend to take you into the operating theatre to have your anaesthetic. If you're having an epidural, you might have that again in a separate room, then be wheeled into the theatre. But then all the screens are put around you, so you won't be able to see nothing anyway. As the majority of these, if you're if you're having a rigid cystoscopy, likely you are going to have it done under general anaesthetic. So I had to remind the anaesthetist. I forgot to tell Mr. Hodgson which hole to use. I didn't want him to try and be trying to shove something up my blank urethra. I didn't think it needed to go as far as actually marking it with a pen. I think the description to the anaesthetist was was quite well, and again used the description of over and under shotgun with a blank off barrel, which made them both laugh before they put me under basically, and then as soon as I closed my eyes were awake again in the recovery room, and asking me if all was all right. I was gasping for a drink. They brought me round a glass of water with a straw just to try and get the dryness out. My mouth was dry, so dry. Throat was okay, but my mouth was really dry. And that's when it hit me. I felt like I was breaking my neck. I was like, oh, I'm breaking my neck. Because then they're messing around with your pillow, not realising what I'm saying. I think a male nurse come along. I said, I'm breaking my neck. I need a pee. I'm breaking my neck. I need a pee. It's obviously where the bladder had been stretched out. It obviously gave them. They know the bladder had been emptied at the end of the procedure, which would have been somewhere around about 4:15. This was now 6:15. So there wouldn't have been a lot of natural feed in to the bladder during the time I've been basically waking up from the anaesthetic. But it felt like I was breaking my neck for a pee. You get that real, you've been sat too long waiting for a pee. It's aching. No, it wasn't painful, it was aching. Because then they put her, shoved a pot underneath me. Ladies, they would probably put you on a bedpan. But they shoved a pot over my shaft, basically, and because you're straining. And funny enough, this did help the pressure, subside. It went down a sort of just a discomfort from really having a metal rod put up through you, basically, sort of thing, after a few minutes. And I was groggy. Constantly wanting to is waking up is everyone's experience is going to be different, but you sort of, as soon as you open your eyes, you want to shut them again. Everything feels heavy. It's a bit of a different experience to being tired before you go to bed, unless you're suffering with something like ME or something like that sort of thing. Everything is really a struggle. Obviously, you're coming round, it's getting better every 5 minutes sort of thing. You're constantly being checked on a nurse. I was constantly asking. I think I might have had a sort of 3 half tumblers of water before before I was fully woke up, and I wanted a cup of tea. So one of the nurses went off and managed to find me a decaf tea bag. Bless them. I don't know where they got it from. They found one somewhere, so I could have a cup of tea, and that made my mouth a lot better. And the surgeon come round, and he said I struggled to take 400 mils before my heart started racing. This is under general anaesthetics. You can imagine how much strain that's putting the body under when you're under general anaesthetic. Um, so yeah, things aren't good. I think the likelihood is more I got a knackered bladder basically, as opposed to anything that could be neurologically causing this. So anyway, I come around enough. They were short on ward space, so I had some sandwiches and some crisps and a cup of tea in recovery, which is a little bit unusual. And I sort of got to the point I was needing to pee, and I just couldn't pee in a bottle for fear really of crapping myself, because I have to exert quite a lot of rectal pressure anyway. So they took me down to the ward, and I said, "Look, I need to pee." And they said, "Well, we'll stand you up." And I managed to go to the toilet and sat down, and I did have a good long pee, a lot of blood, because I had biopsies sort of thing. It's a bit disturbing, but no, it's what you'd expect really, sort of thing. No, and I did feel better after that. Obviously, I was uncomfortable because I was needing a pee. I'd had sort of like 3 small glasses of water and a mug of tea by this point. So they sat me back down in the chair, because then my shaft is throbbing, which is no, and it doesn't look very pleasant. It all looks very sore. The fact you're then leaking blood as well doesn't look very pleasant. Other than that, I wasn't in too much discomfort, because then I asked for another cup of tea. They couldn't find any more decaf tea, so they brought me around water. And I think I probably had another 2 glasses of water. And it's important at this point to make sure you can pee, because there's always a risk of urine retention from having a rigid cystoscopy, especially maybe if you've got enlarged prostate or strictures, to make sure you can comfortably go for a pee before you leave the hospital. The pain at this point wasn't too bad. I suppose a certain amount of general anaesthetic and local anaesthetic was still in my system, so though peeing was sore, it wasn't excruciating. They come around and take your cannula out, and they came around with a couple of tubes of lidocaine to send me home with. My missus come and picked me up. I'm still quite tired, and got home, and went for a pee again. I thought I'll try the old jug of water trick, which makes it a lot more pleasant. I would advise this, or either sitting in the bath. It does help the pain quite considerably. I came on and had ibuprofen and codeine. I had more tea, so you want to try and flush your system through as much as you can. And so I know I've been using the lidocaine. I used the lidocaine before I went to bed because my shaft was quite sore. I've used it again here now this morning, obviously because it lasts a reasonable while, sort of thing. So I would advise you ask for that before you go home, even if you don't need it. Some of the surgeons might prescribe it anyway, but for the sake of it, I would have some lidocaine gel to go home with. So other than that, going on, it's just a waiting game. Really, the distension might help me gain back some of my capacity. Maybe get me back. Hope is it will get me back maybe to what I was like back in May last year, with a sort of a 300 ml capacity. Because I go down the route of intermittent catheters, you really need a minimum 200 ml capacity. So I got my catheter training in a couple of weeks anyway, which will give me the option of Foley's. So the day the discomfort needing to pee is gone, but obviously the shaft is still sore. No, the beauty with a rigid scope is that once it goes up there, it's up there. They're not sliding it in and out and twisting it, because everything else moves inside it. But I said you are getting stretched out with a piece of steel, basically. That's without the dilating they probably do, be it with a normal urethra or bifid urethra. During the procedure, I said the blood, I haven't passed any more blood since late last night. It's all clear, which is good, which means any biopsies have healed over. They say it's normal to see blood maybe for up to a couple of days. You get all this guidance when you're sent home anyway. I probably worried a lot more over the procedure than I should have done, really. But like everything, you don't know what you're going to be like. There's a lot of not horror stories, but a lot of experiences online where people haven't had good experiences with rigid cystoscopies and hydrodistension. In terms of my symptoms going forward, it's not looking good particularly. There is an option, maybe a Botox, around a Botox. That's why I need an intermittent catheter, which might again give me some capacity. I think if they can't stabilise my capacity, there's a risk really that I could be looking at major surgery for either bladder augmentation or maybe even a bladder stoma. So that's about the end of the story, really. Again, I know if you've been booked in one of these procedures, please don't worry about it. No, there is discomfort and there is pain, but if it's managed correctly, it shouldn't be unbearable. No, if you end up with urine retention, go to your doctor and they will stick a catheter in until everything settles. There are always risks of perforating the bladder. I think these are quite rare. There are risks that maybe if you're on blood thinners, they always ask you stop taking them a long time before your operation, again to make sure that you don't carry on bleeding. There's obviously risk that people might bleed for a few days, but again, this should all stop quite quickly. Any questions? Yeah, just stick them in the comments box. Again, this video is mainly experience based around a bifid urethra and hydrodistension. It isn't necessarily connected to interstitial cystitis. There is a chance that what affected me originally was about severe interstitial cystitis. Biopsies might prove that, they might not. So we'll have to wait and see, really. Okay, guys, cheers and bye.